MU 88.5 at American University in Washington. Welcome to the Politics Hour starring Tom Sherwood. I'm Kojo Nandi. Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. Tom, welcome.
Good afternoon. Happy 4th of July weekend.
Later in the broadcast, we'll be talking with Virginia Delegate Marcus Simon. He's a Democrat. We'll talk with him about ethics issues in the wake of the Supreme Court overturning a former Governor Bob McDonnell's conviction. And joining us in studio right now is Leif Dormsjo. He is the director of the D.C. Department of Transportation. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me.
Feel free to join Tom and me in the early topics that we'll be discussing that may not have a direct relationship to you, but if you have an opinion, feel free to voice it. Kaya Henderson resigning September 30th as chancellor of D.C. Public Schools. She's going to be in the interim replaced by the school's chief, and a national search will be launched for a new school's chancellor. Kaya Henderson had said on this broadcast that she would not be resigning until next year. She seems to have brought that forward some. I was looking around to see if there was any scuttlebutt that I could dig up as to why this was occurring. So far, I haven't found any. How about you?
Well, she had told me 2 years ago, and she was at Georgetown, where she's, I think, on the Board of Regents. She had said she intended to do the 16-17 school year, and that would be a 10-year period for her in the schools. 3 years as chief of staff to Michelle Rhee and then the successor. So something happened to make her change her mind. I think she has a son who's going to be graduating from high school, and I don't know if she had some conversation. The mayor said she didn't ask her to quit, so that's one thing. Mayor Bowser said she had no role in that. So it may be that she just moved her timetable up. You know, we're not automatic robots, so maybe Kaya Henderson decided this was the time to go. There'll be political, I'm sure, conspiracy theories about it, but you know, she has done a great deal of work. She has her critics from the union and other things about contracts. But there's no question she continued with less acrimony the reforms that were desperately needed in the school system that were started by Michelle Rhee, whether you like some of those reforms or not. She's done that with rising test rates, rising enrollments, but still significant problems with the academic achievement of students.
Leif Dormsjo, you are a member of the mayor's cabinet. We're looking for scuttlebutt here. What do you know? Tell us. What do you know?
I want to hear this answer.
I've got nothing for you.
You got nothing?
I got nothing. I've really enjoyed working with her. My assumption is it's personal reasons.
Yes, she said that she needs to spend more time with her family. And when she was here the last time, she counts years as school superintendent or chancellor as dog years. She says 10 years is really 70 years.
Well, you know, it's superintendent's what it's like a 3-year term before your head is chopped off by somebody who's not satisfied. So there's a lot of work that's been done, whether it was the closing of the schools. You remember when Michelle Rhee came in and said, and Mayor Fenty said at the time he's going to back her 1,000% or whatever it is. Whatever she wanted to do, he would support. And she knocked the tables over, and she created the atmosphere for change, made some change, and Kaya Henderson was her deputy. So while Michelle Rhee was out being vilified or praised by many people, it was Kaya Henderson there doing the work to change the school system. So that's why she was prepared to be the superintendent, now called the chancellor. And she's continued that process.
The biggest difference between Michelle Rhee and Kaya Henderson seems to have been the difference of style, the manner in which they communicated. Michelle Rhee, remembered, tended to be a little more confrontational, tended to be a little more dismissive of opposition.
But she also was breaking. I mean, I remember so well, I was at Rodman's up on Wisconsin Avenue, and this employee of the school system came up to me as soon as Michelle Rhee was appointed, and she said, "We'll get her," meaning the bureaucracy would wear her down.
Yeah.
And it didn't wear her down, but it was a very rough period of time. And again, the schools are better. They're growing. The schools have been physically improved, academically improved. And the question now is, will there be any lapse in what's happening?
The question now is whether or not Pepco will get the big rate hike that it is asking for. Council members Mary Che and Alyssa Silverman saying the ink had barely dried on the merger agreement when what they predicted, and that is that Pepco would ask for a massive rate hike, has already come true. Now there is, and you can explain this, there is a $25 million fund that was a part of the agreement that the council, that the mayor wanted to control, but which ended up in the control of the Public Service Commission. Pepco is suggesting that that $25 million or so can be used to offset the rate increase so that it would not hit ratepayers themselves, residential ratepayers until 2019.
Well, to be fair to Pepco, which is very difficult, for a journalist. No, just teasing. No, to be fair, Pepco had said during these negotiations that they would be asking for a rate increase whether the merger went through or not. For the last several years, after the derecho particularly, there were demands by the government and by the citizens to spend more money, to have fewer outages and outages that last shorter periods of time. Pepco contends that it has done that at the cost of hundreds of millions of dollars, and that it now wants a rate increase to help pay for that. By law, it can seek monies to pay for its expenses. So it's asking for a 5.25% rate increase. For a residential customer, I think that's like $4 a month. $4 and some odd cents. But because the Pepco-Exelon merger was so contentious, and it's not even over yet, the Attorney General and the People's Council are looking at that merger still to see if there's any legal way to stop it. People thought immediately, well, they're just doing this because we knew this Exelon company was going to come in here and soak us. I think the answer to that is actually somewhere between those two. Needed money. And of course, I'm sure they're asking for 5.25%, but that doesn't mean they'll get it. They might settle for 3.75 or something like that.
The People's Council said this is going to be a test for the Public Service Commission to see if they use that $25 million in the manner in which the mayor and the People's Council had advocated that it be
it's
used.
A test for the People's Council, Ms. Madeleine Fry, that she, in fact, bird dogs what the company does to see what happens.
As I said, our guest is Leif Dormsjo. He is the director of the DC Department of Transportation. If you have questions or comments for him, give us a call at 800-433-8850. You can send email to kojo@wamu.org. Go to our website, kojoshow.org. Watch the live video stream of the conversation, or you can send us a tweet at Kojo Show. Since the start of the Safe Track, many commuters have had to abandon the rail system entirely. And frankly, I've got a lot of questions relating to the Safe Track. But as you know, Tom Sherwood is a very impatient individual. And even before the Safe Track, his major concern was downtown gridlock. So I suspect he wants to get to that as quickly as possible. That and, of course, Beach Drive. But go ahead, Tom.
Oh, good. Well, thank you very much. I drove through town today. It was horrifying. 12th and East Street, a huge truck parked on the east side of 12th Street. Decided he wanted to turn around. It took him like 2 minutes to turn around, and he didn't care. Rush hour traffic was blocked. I've discussed this with you before.
Sure.
You've taken steps. You've changed the signaling for many lights to help some roads. But the success is that the downtown area is growing. It's unbelievably growing. The bad news is you can't get through it because it's so terrible. And I've heard it from across the board, whether you're on New York Avenue and North Capitol Street, or whether you're in Wisconsin, where that car fell into a hole because construction workers had not secured the metal plates, or whether it's that 9th Street tunnel going into Virginia, where it is a war zone when people try to get from 3 lanes into 1 to go onto the freeway. It just seems that we are losing the battle over traffic. Now, I know you've been struggling with some of this. What can you tell us that's optimistic?
Outside of get a bicycle.
Well, I mean, you should get a bicycle.
I have a bicycle.
So do I.
Pedestrians and bikes are part of the transportation system, but I'm hearing it from a lot of people, and I admit it's also my own personal complaint.
Yes.
Well, it's certainly something that we're cognizant of. There's a lot of commentary that we get directly at the department. We work a lot with the bid organizations who are, on the front lines of trying to manage transportation demands and the traffic that
the bid organizations being the business investment,
the downtown business improvement district.
Yeah, who have a lot at stake in terms of safe and efficient movement of people. One of the major things that we've done in the last year has been the optimization of our signal systems. And we're not done with that yet. So you'll see improvements in Ward 7 and 8 and also in the downtown area, because we've completed those networks. And essentially what we're doing there is we're coming in and we're retiming all of the intersections. They haven't been addressed in over 10 years. And what we're able to show is that travel times for vehicles and also buses have really improved. And we've also been able to deconflict a lot of the pedestrian conflicts in the downtown, but it's still something that we have to continue to actively manage. We're doing more things in terms of innovation in parking. So we've got a dynamic parking pilot in the Chinatown and Penn Quarter areas. It's really going to take an across-the-board effort to deal with the travel demands. The construction activity, we really try to enforce restrictions during the rush hours, but there are violations and that can create backups. We have traffic collisions and incidents that can create traffic issues as well. So we're certainly working really hard in this category, but there's more to do. I wouldn't say that we're anywhere near solving the traffic congestion concerns.
If I could just one follow-up question is I do think part of the problem is the enforcement. I don't think police officers, I know the traffic division doesn't really do traffic control anymore unless there's a special event, and traffic control aides and parking ticket writers are just not out there. I do travel a great deal in town, and during rush hour on K Street, which is very busy, not the service lane, but the pass-through lane, when a truck feels like it can stop and unload in rush hour from a travel lane on K Street downtown at 15th Street, it's just extraordinary to me that there's no enforcement. And I know trucks, I mean, we have to accommodate trucks, and we've got this new system where they can park for 2 hours and pay to park.
Right.
But there doesn't seem to be enough loading zones. They seem to be suggestions as opposed to obligations. People will turn, I mean, I just don't see any traffic enforcement. People park in rush hour lanes. Trucks deliver every day on 12th Street, for example. It's always 2 or 3 trucks. And I don't see any enforcement out in the morning. Sometimes at night I see parking ticket writers, but there's nobody at the major intersections. I think you have 10 intersections where you have traffic control aides. I don't see any kind of all hands on deck thing to get people to their jobs in the morning and get them out in the afternoon.
Well, I think that that's a fair criticism. In the past, our department, essentially was hands off with regard to the enforcement piece and was reliant on the police department and the Department of Public Works, which does parking enforcement. I've decided that we need to be part of the solution. And so we're getting our traffic control officers trained by the Metropolitan Police Department so we can issue moving violations. They had been doing that in the past, but they stopped doing that. So I think our folks have to be more engaged, particularly in the downtown area, because the parking enforcement personnel for the Department of Public Works are pretty active on the arterials, making sure that the parking restrictions are in place on the curbside lanes. We need, I think, to step it up in the downtown area. And thankfully, the council and the mayor have increased our budgetary resources to expand the number of folks that we can hire for the traffic control division.
Good.
And we've actually just made offers to, I believe, about 15 people this week. And we're going to hire in total 30 to 35 more traffic control officers by the end of July.
And you'll get
Your
criticism.
version
People
of
are
all
just
hands
giving
on
you
deck.
tickets that you're just doing
Oh,
tickets to
sure.
raise money. But for anyone who's traveling, I don't care if you're a resident or a suburbanite, you do want the traffic rules are not suggestions.
Our guest is Leif Dormsjo. He's the director of the DC Department of Transportation. If you have questions or comments about traffic or anything else, you can call us at 800-433-8850. Since the start of SafeTrack, a lot of commuters have abandoned the rail system entirely. And DDOT has done a lot to offer a variety of transit options. But what have been the main challenges in executing these plans or in, communicating them to riders?
Well, I think the main challenge with the SafeTrack plan is that the service impacts change every 2 weeks. So we've gone through effectively 2 surges already. These are the safety surges where there's a closure or single tracking operation within a particular segment of the metro rail system. So it's difficult to communicate the variability of all of these changes and to kind of tailor our traffic mitigation and our transit support activities around these kind of moving disruptions. All in all, I think things have been going pretty well. We have seen record numbers of people commuting by bicycle. We're basically seeing kind of bike to work day volumes every day, which is pretty good stuff. We're also seeing a lot of folks teleworking, pick up on certain bus routes. So people are being diverted away from the orange, blue, and silver line onto kind of parallel bus routes, or they're using MARC. And MARC numbers are coming in a couple thousand riders per day higher than normal. So people, if you give them enough time, I think will plan ahead and they'll make adjustments. So I think some of the panic has been a little bit overstated, but we're only into the second surge. We've got 13 more to go.
Speaking of adjustments, as you mentioned, there was a record-breaking ridership for bike share during the first week of SafeTrack. Has DDOT done anything to make bikes a major alternative now for people who have been using Metro?
Sure. We've been working.
Any adjustments?
We've been working with the bike share operator to do two major things. One, they're setting up corrals. So instead of just relying on the bike station docks that are just out there, they actually set up areas where they make many more bikes available for use or for return. And so those bike corrals have really helped amp up the numbers. They're going to have a bike corral on the mall for July 4th as well. So that's been one really important thing that has been going on. And then the other thing is a changing in the pricing plan. We now allow people to use the Capital Bike Share on an hourly basis as opposed to a full day. So instead of having to pay $8 for an entire 24-hour period, you can spend $2 and use the bike share for up to 30 minutes for a short commute. And that, I think, has contributed to an uptick in the number of people that are using that service.
I'm one of the people who've essentially stopped using Metro because it's just too inconvenient. As I've said, allow extra time. People don't really have the extra time that Metro asks us to allow for 45 minutes for your mother or father taking kids to school in the morning or those types of things. You don't have extra time. At what point will Metro's surge really affect the district? Is there you said we've got how many more surges to go?
13
to go. Are any of those going to be the ones we should really be watching out for here in the District of Columbia, more so than the ones we've already had, the two we've already had?
Well, I think it's an achievement that we've gotten through the second surge, which affected 3 lines, right in the core of the district, and people have certainly felt that impact. I mean, typically, the orange, silver, and blue line are carrying 6,000 riders through Eastern Market. That the bus bridges that they have there are only picking up about a third of that, or 25% of it. So there have been serious impacts in the district, but we are looking at the red line surges that are going to go into effect in August. There's one August 1st for a week, and then there's another one in October, which the staff are calling Red October. So I would say that we're concerned about those red line
heavily
surges.
traveled line.
Yeah, heavily traveled line.
Put on your headphones, please, because we're about to speak with Teresa in Bowie, Maryland. Teresa, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Kojo. I just wanted to mention that I just wanted to reiterate what you guys were talking about in terms of the driving situation in D.C. My fiance is a deliverer of, everybody's washing machines and dishwashers and things, and he finds it very difficult to find parking. And I think it should be allowed without tickets. They shouldn't have to pay for it to deliver these equipment to these houses. And my second comment was just a compliment on the situation with this Metro. This surge has gone so much better than I thought it would be. and I really attribute it to the fact that they just saturated the area with employees to answer questions, because having 50 million people running around like chickens with their heads cut off with no answers, that's a big that's a big crutch. So thank you so much. It seems to have been going really well for me.
Is that the
And I take
result?
it every day.
You're on the Metro board also. Is that the result of collaboration between DDOT and the Metro board, or do you take all the credit for that?
Oh, no. It's been the whole region. And, we convened some early planning meetings with the surrounding jurisdictions. And I think the messaging from the executives, the mayor, has been really out front on all the safe track related announcements, has made a big difference. We actually, as a region, have a joint portal. It's called Go DC Go, and that website has seen record traffic, and it's really a great resource for people to get information about what's coming.
And you also had the Board of Trade, Jim Denniger, hold conferences for
Business community has
businesses,
been
and the
helpful, definitely.
Council of Governments has tried to do things. It really is kind of a region working together. If you just figure out a way to fund Metro.
We got a tweet from Susan Balding who says, if we're going to achieve Vision Zero, DDOT needs to pretty aggressively prioritize pedestrians and bikes over cars. Why are there still so many instances of sidewalks being completely blocked on one side of the street due to construction? And why isn't DDOT accelerating construction of the protected cycle tracks?
Okay, two very good issues, and certainly an informed listener there. We are doing quite a bit in terms of making sure we have safe accommodations for pedestrians and cyclists when there is construction or utility activity in the right of way. I know some folks are disappointed that we're not able to, put in replacement sidewalks in every single case. But we exhaust every possible opportunity to make sure that we can have pedestrian and cycling access. We put a lot of demands on the development community to pay for those types of accommodations, and we give very serious thought to all the kind of traffic safety things that go into that. With the second part of that had to do with
protected bike lanes.
We've got a number of really good projects in the pipeline right now that I think are going to substantially increase the mileage for protected bike lanes. A lot of streetscape projects, that will pick up 8 to 10 blocks of protected bike lanes when we can finally get those projects in the hands of our contractors. But
there's been some controversy over protected bike lanes. Last year, members of historic black churches in the Shaw neighborhood opposed DDOT's plan for a protected bike lane that would have cut into their Sunday parking spaces. It turned into a discussion about gentrification and what changes in infrastructure are needed. What did you learn from that dispute?
Yeah, I think we learned, that we need to do a better job of making sure that all the stakeholders in a particular community are getting the same information at the same time. I think our first public meeting was a little uneven, and things devolved into a lot of kind of emotional finger pointing and suspicion. But we did turn that around. We had a really great public meeting several months later, where we're very civil, very informed, a lot of mutual recognition among the different parties about, the interests, that they feel very strongly about. I'm confident we're going to be able to figure out a way to.
Do you think you're well on the way to balancing those interests?
I think we can make it happen. We need to factor in a whole host of things, including, parking and bike safety and traffic operations, the degree to which, the bike routes that we install impact large facilities like the convention center, which is, an anchor institution in that community. I think we're going to be able to work it out. And I've had very, I think respectful and, kind of appropriate interactions with all the leadership of the different groups there. So I think we're going to get there. It's just taken a while to move through some of the design issues and to get feedback on an iterative basis. But I'm comfortable we'll get there.
Let's talk about people with disabilities. Dara Baldwin, who often tweets some of the things we talk about here, said people with disabilities can't really use bike share. Could you have 3 wheel bikes or something like that to help them. But more importantly, the city for years has not enforced the people with disabilities parking meters. And just, I think in the last couple of weeks, you've put out a request for proposals or for comment. When is the city going to start enforcing I think they're red, they're blue, they're different kinds of things.
Right.
When is the city going to enforce people with disabilities parking? Because that's seen it all the time. I have to say I've used them a couple of times in emergencies, but always feel bad. But they're not enforced. When is that going to happen?
The current policy seems to be that anybody can park on them right now once you pay, and people with disabilities don't have to pay. The new policy, it is my understanding, is that only people with disabilities will be able to use them, but then they will have to pay.
Right. So what we have right now is a program that would activate the red top meters in the central business district, and they would be reserved for disabled persons, but they would also be metered, and there would be a payment involved. So the idea is to move to an all must pay system, but have reserved spaces on every block
in the downtown
area.
Initially, it was just going to be all over the city, and that was uncontrollable.
When I came into the administration, they had already installed these red top meters across the entire city without really, I think, thinking through how it would work operationally. And we formed a task force that included many of the members of the advocacy community, the tourism community, the business improvement districts, and we really worked this through and determined that the central business district was the area where there was a lot of placard abuse, where a lot of people were using fraudulent disabled parking placards.
10th Street in Lafayette.
Particularly around
that's
Lafayette Plaza and a lot of the federal facilities to get all day free parking. Mm-hmm. And that's that's in no one's interest. It doesn't help us in terms of the proper amount of turnover that we want for businesses. It blocks, people who have disabilities from getting to their place of work or to getting to appointments and things like that. So we had to figure out a way to deal with the abuse. This reserve parking program is something that's been effective in other cities. It worked in Baltimore while I was working in transportation in Maryland. And so we're now about to wrap up the public comment period, and hopefully we'll be able to turn the program on sometime later this summer.
Well, good.
Yeah.
Right. I know we're almost out of it. Can I ask him about the streetcar?
Sure.
Streetcar is free. It's running. A lot of people are using it. When are we going to have, you saved the streetcar. You could have made a decision to abandon it, but you said it was worth keeping. You did keep it. It's been running people without charge, but we still don't know how much it's going to cost to ride and how you're going to collect the fares. Is there any quick progress you can tell me about that?
Sure, that's a good question. Our ridership has been very strong relative to what our projections had been. We had thought that the daily ridership might be, 1,500 to 2,000 riders. We're up around 2,400 during the weekday, closer to 3,000 on the weekend. Had 5,000 riders the day of the Bluegrass Festival at Kingman Island. So the ridership numbers are healthy. We'd like to increase that, obviously, increase the service to include Sundays as well. So those are things that we're focused on. With regard to fare collection, many systems in the country, Portland and Dallas, Atlanta, have had fare-free periods, or they've just indefinitely had a free fare. Even Denver has had a downtown circulator bus. It's much more like a streetcar that's been free for 10 years. We're going to have to balance out what's the cost to collect the fares, and whether or not it's kind of worth it. If it costs us $3 to collect $1 fare, it's not really economically.
You're suggesting maybe there will not be a fare?
Well, I think we need to look at that. There's a lot of mobile applications that are being used in cities around the country, but more predominantly in Europe. If we have a low-cost way of introducing fare collection, I think that's the direction we would go, but it has to make sense. I mean, we should not pay more money just to collect a dollar.
Get those Salvation Army red buckets.
We're just almost out of time.
Thanks for volunteering.
But we got an email from Brett who says, is there photo enforcement technology for blocking the box? There's serious issues with the 14th and Constitution intersection during evening rush. Pulling people over real time just exacerbates the congestion. Is there photo enforcement technology for blocking the box?
That's a good question. I think that there is. I haven't worked in a jurisdiction where they've had a block the box photo enforcement program, but certainly between red lights and speeding cameras, I think that's something that can be done. I think I'd have to talk about that with the police chief and the council before launching off into that.
A traffic control person who has a modern technology-driven gun that just point at if you're stuck in the middle of the intersection, she points it at your tag and you can have a ticket. And I thank you for shopping.
Tom Sherwood, he's the acting director of the DC Department of Transportation. The real director is Leif Dormsjo. He joined us in studio. Leif Dormsjo, thank you very much for joining us. This is the Politics Hour. Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. Coming up, Delegate Marcus Simon, Democrat of Virginia, to talk about ethics issues in Virginia. But first, Tom Sherwood, former DC Delegate Walter Fauntroy finally came home this week from the United Arab Emirates. He's been in that part of the world for the past 4 years or so. Once he arrived at Dulles Airport, he was arrested, held overnight in jail in Virginia, but on the next day was able to reunite with his wife and his family. What happens next?
Well, this is a civil matter. This is the best news of the week, certainly, and for people who know Walter Fauntroy's history, that he has finally come home from this mysterious 4.5-year jaunt to Africa and the Middle East. He's 83. There were some questions about his mental health, his physical health. Johnny Barnes, a lawyer here, among other people, Glen Ivey and Prince George's, all worked together to get him home. His family was in process of possibly losing their house to foreclosure. It all seems to date back to 2009, January, inauguration of Barack Obama, when Fauntroy had the idea he would hold a big inaugural party, not an official one, but just one. And he expected to collect money and pay for it. And he wrote a check for something like $50,000 to $55,000. It bounced. And he has said in the past he was afraid he'd be prosecuted. There was an arrest warrant for him. Glen Ivey got it reduced to a summons. He'll be in court on June the 20th in Prince George's County to explain why he hasn't paid back that $50-something thousand. He's paid about half of it back.
You said that was the best news of the week. I am not sure that former Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell will agree. He will argue that the best news of the week was the Supreme Court overturning his conviction on ethics violations. The Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts making the argument that only formal and concrete government actions counted, filing a lawsuit or making an administrative determination. He said, quoting here, conscientious public officials arrange meetings for constituents, contact other officials on their behalf, and include them in events all of the time. He is, in fact, setting a higher standard for what can be considered a violation.
This could, in fact, the ruling could, in fact, complicate the prosecution of corruption. But for McDonnell, why he had a bad week, is that the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court talked about his tawdry tales of Ferraris, Rolexes, and ball gowns. He said, the Chief Justice said the Supreme Court is not there to judge this improper or embarrassing behavior, tawdry behavior. But the question was whether or not the federal bribery law had been expanded too far that you would curb the ability for politicians to do their jobs. And if you have to say something like 44 attorneys general around the country agreed that McDonnell's case had gone too far.
We'll see how that complicates the life of one politician who has been advancing legislation to deal with this in the Commonwealth of Virginia. He is Marcus Simon. He's a member of the Virginia House of Delegates. He represents the Commonwealth's 53rd District, which includes parts of Fairfax County and the city of Falls Church. He joins us in studio. Delegate Simon, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, Coach. I'm very happy to be here.
That Supreme Court ruling on McDonnell this week shines a spotlight on Virginia's political culture. What's your takeaway from the Supreme Court's ruling here?
Well, it's sort of hard to argue with a unanimous Supreme Court decision. As Tom said, you had several attorneys general that said that the jury instruction that was given to the McDonnell jurors just was too broad and made it almost impossible for them to find him not guilty, given that the definition that they used for official act could have included almost any activity. That said, the activity itself was pretty egregious, and I think that most people and most Virginians were appalled, when they started to hear some of the stories of what happened. So the fact, the other problem we've got is that the reason the feds have to take this up so often and in so many states is because state statutes don't do an adequate job of taking care of these sorts of problems. I think most Virginians say, if you've got somebody who wants to get a contract with Virginia, giving you a Rolex, offering you a ride in his Ferrari, paying for your daughter's wedding, there's something wrong there, and there ought to be a way to prosecute that kind of activity under state law. Unfortunately, there weren't a lot of good options.
And you're supposed to, in Virginia, the lax laws are that you're supposed to report gifts, and if you report them, it's okay. You just report them, right? Whatever the gifts are.
Well, that was the case before the McDonnell scandal, right. and the idea being that you can do whatever you want. You can take as much money as you want from whomever you want, as long as you tell everybody, as long as you're transparent about it.
That was narrowed now.
Right. And the idea was that ultimately for politicians, we're accountable to the voters. So as long as we disclose, and we're very open about what we're doing, it's up to the voters to decide, whether that kind of conduct is acceptable or not.
You've been unable to get, you've supported the tougher ethics rules. You've been there. This is your third session you just completed.
Yep, that's
in
right.
The legislature. What's the hope that this will change? Some people have said, look, McDonnell is not going to be, probably won't be prosecuted, but it's much less serious, so there's no problem in Virginia.
Yeah, I think that's the wrong takeaway from this decision. There was a state senator who gave a press conference and said, geez, we woke up from a bad dream. It turns out that it was just a dream after all, that nothing really bad happened, and we need to revisit, our ethics rules. Well, that's not the case. I mean, the fact is, the facts haven't changed. The activity didn't change. What we have decided is that the laws that we have to address it weren't adequate, and I think still aren't. I think that the prospects of getting any of these new bills to toughen it up are probably, it's a steep climb, because
in the wake of the Supreme Court decision,
even in the wake of the Supreme Court decision, even before that, people don't like to pass laws that could become a trap for them. I mean, that's the discussion.
People meaning the legislators.
The legislators.
Themselves.
Why would we want to regulate ourselves? Why would we want to create these opportunities, for to have us prosecuted?
You think differently.
What's that?
You think differently.
Well, I do. I think that the public expects more from us than that. I think that in many ways, this decision is bad for the perception of Virginia. Again, it once again shines the spotlight on this very permissive culture that we have down here. You have, or have down there, I should say. I'm not in Richmond now, when I'm in Richmond. And it causes people to think, these guys go down to Richmond and it's anything goes, and they're hobnobbing with lobbyists and corporate interests, having steak dinners, and
that is what happened.
But having shunned that spotlight on the one hand, and on the other hand, saying that there's nothing illegal about it, does that make it easier or harder to pass ethics reforms in Virginia?
Well, you would think it would make it easier to say, hey, look, we can't rely on the feds to do this. We really, the public expects us to police ourselves, and here are some common sense things we can do. For instance, we created an ethics council. But the Ethics Council only has the authority to tell us that we're good to go. If an Ethics Council says, yeah, you want to do that, that's okay. It doesn't have the power to investigate. It can't respond to complaints. It can't audit disclosure forms. So, if I have a disclosure form and I say I didn't receive any gifts, there's no way for anybody to look into that. Well, how is that possible that you didn't have any gifts at all? And there's no random sampling, no auditing, no real teeth to the Ethics Commission.
Last year, Virginia passed a bill to put a $100 annual limit on gifts to public officials from lobbyists, but legislators remain free to take unlimited campaign contributions from individuals and corporations. Exactly what gifts count towards this $100 gift cap, and what gifts do not count? I know a ticket to a Washington football game doesn't.
Right. Well, a lot of what we've tried to do, I would characterize as window dressing. So we can say, well, we put a $100 gift cap on ourselves. We can't take gifts of more than $100, but you've got to look at the caveats, from a lobbyist or the lobbyist's principal. So if the gift comes from a political action committee, it doesn't count. If the person's not a lobbyist, Johnny Williams wasn't a lobbyist. the gift doesn't count.
He was the person of scientific who was doing all the favors for the McDonnell family.
That's right.
But it also says that the gift comes from a personal friend, it doesn't count.
You're right. So if you're
how do you define that?
And every politician says, "Well, my friend here, my friend there, all people are my friend."
I think by the rules we have to call everybody our friend before we address them.
Any hope in Virginia for change coming up?
Yeah, I think so. There's a growing amount of pressure to clean up our act. And again, hopefully that will be the lesson that the public takes and that some of the politicians get, is that people expect more. And Kojo, what's worse than the issue that you can accept unlimited campaign contributions from any source at all, even worse than that, you can spend it on anything you want. We don't have any bill that prohibits the personal use of campaign money. So if somebody with business before the state wants to contribute $10,000 to my campaign, I don't have to turn around and actually spend that on a campaign. I can turn around and spend that on anything I want to, which, to my way of thinking, makes it not much different than if they just give me the $10,000 and I put it in my personal checking.
Why don't you call Governor McDonnell on this and say, look, all right, maybe he'll be clear of the legal charges, but you remember he did hold a press conference, paid money back, and apologized for embarrassing the Commonwealth. Why don't you ask Governor McDonnell to help write a new bill for the legislature on and the governor and the statewide officials of what could be and should not be accepted? He might be able to do that very well, having lived through this horror.
It's
You're
probably not a bad
beginning
idea.
the crafting of Governor McDonnell's political comeback?
No, I don't think he's going to have I don't see a political comeback for him, but I really do think, a lot of people have known him. He's 22 years in public life, that many people, whether they liked his conservative politics or not, thought he was a decent person. He got into the miserable marriage thing he was involved in, but maybe he is in the position to say, here's how I think the law should be written.
Tom, I work with anybody who's got a good background in this, anybody who's willing to come forward with a sincere suggestion as to how we could do this and what ought to be done. And Bob and the folks close to him obviously have some very recent experience with this topic.
Good.
Our guest is Marcus Simon. He's a member of Virginia's House of Delegates. He represents the Commonwealth's 53rd District. If you have questions or comments for Delegate Simon, call us at 800-433-8850. Go to our website, kojoshow.org. Watch the live video stream. Ask a question, make a comment. Send us a tweet at Kojo Show or email to kojo@wamu.org. Virginia also allows legislators to accept tickets to quote-unquote widely attended events. What are considered widely attended events under Virginia's laws?
Well, that's a great question, because we thought we knew what it meant, and then the Ethics Council told us what it really meant. The idea behind the widely attended events exception is that you get invited to a reception. You get invited to the Fiddlers Convention, and it's all people with an interest in bluegrass music. You go there. You get invited to the CPAs, their annual dinner, and so you can go to the annual CPAs dinner because it's all CPAs. Well, it turns out that the Ethics Council said, actually, tickets to a Redskins game, to the luxury box of the Redskins game, is a widely attended event. So if I'm only getting 4 tickets, it's not 25 tickets. Widely attended event is supposed to be at least 25 people. And they said, no, it's all 50,000, all 75,000 people in the stadium who all have an interest in pro football. That makes this a widely attended event.
Oh my goodness! I'd like to see 50,000 people in the owner's box.
So, as I said at the time, that blows a hole, a mile wide, 3 miles wide in this idea of the widely attended event exception. I could take tickets to a Taylor Swift concert. My daughter's gonna be upset that I mispronounced that, but there's 100,000 other fans of her music, and that would make that a widely attended event.
You are a self-described progressive Democrat. And you described the most recent session of the General Assembly this past January and February as downright ugly. And it said it's not easy to be a progressive Democrat in Richmond. What do you see that with the presidential election this fall? I know there aren't any state elections until next year, but there will be a lot of things going on. But do you see anything changing if the Democrats I don't know, are you a Bernie or a Hillary person?
I'm with her right now. She's won the nomination.
Now, were you with Bernie for?
I didn't commit. I probably, if you looked at my policies and lined them up against both presidential candidates, I think most of my stuff would fall in the Bernie column.
Okay, but so you're obviously for Hillary then to win in November, but then you go into the Republicans have announced they're preparing not only for this fall. I can't remember the name of their campaign, but it's to prepare for the elections in 2017.
Yeah, no, I think that it's been disappointing. This is my 3rd session, so I came down there in an era, and I discovered quickly that anything that you could attach Barack Obama's name to in Richmond made it toxic. And so, we couldn't get any progress with Medicaid expansion. If we called it, because they called it Obama's Medicaid expansion. That was the talking point. With the Clean Power Plan, we have folks in tidal, in parts of Norfolk, they're underwater. We have folks that really could benefit from taking some action on climate change and know that, but they can't do it because it's Obama's Clean Power Plan. I worry a little bit that
could be Hillary will be worse.
Right, with Hillary, may be even worse. I mean, she has, unfortunately, among the very conservative Republicans, she has some branding issues with them, and she's very, I guess, polarizing would be the best word. So we may be in for more of that, even with a Hillary victory in Virginia.
What do you do for your own living when you're not a public servant?
I am a real estate attorney.
Oh, that's exciting.
Speaking of
polarizing,
polarizing, before George Mason changed its law school name to Antonin Scalia this May, you submitted a petition objecting to the idea and asking for more public input. You said a law school named for Scalia is, quoting here, as polarizing and controversial as the man himself. What effect would the renaming have on Virginia's public institutions and how it operates, do you think?
Well, the renaming, I think, is probably effective today. So I think that today they're going to officially roll it out as the Antonin Scalia Law School. They changed the order in which they put that.
Why did they choose today? Was it a particular snub?
No, July 1st is where everything starts in Virginia. All
it's
the new
also
law,
a particular snub for Marcus Simon.
Yeah, that's right.
Because today is his birthday. They had to do it on your birthday. Happy birthday, by the way.
Hopefully they aren't that mean spirit. I don't think that was what they had in mind.
Yeah, everything starts on July 1st out of Virginia. It seems like
I think
fiscal year or something.
Yeah, the problem we've got is with the branding of the law school. I mean, it's clearly a signal that says, hey, this is a conservative law school. Conservatives are welcome. Liberals or progressives need not apply, or may not be welcome here. The other part of it was it was a condition of a gift from the Koch brothers and their foundation, and it was tied to establishing some centers there for the study of law and economics and for the study of the administrative state, and it was tied to some. There remaining an emphasis on a particular strain or thought process in studying the law, which I don't think is appropriate in a public university setting.
You suggested that the law school's been bought and sold.
I think that's right. And I think that they'll say we haven't been bought because we were there anyway. In other words, we're not being influenced. We were as conservative as you want us to be, or as anybody could hope to be. So we just found a like-minded donor. But the problem is that they can't change. They're locked in. And if the dean leaves, the money goes away. So
I was at an event last night that Tom Davis, a former congressman, a Republican congressman from Northern Virginia, was talking about the possibilities of statehood for the district. But I always remembered that Tom Davis has said that Northern Virginia is more like New Jersey than it is like the Commonwealth of Virginia. And that while the Democrats are taking hold in Northern Virginia, you still have Prince William County and Loudoun County as battleground areas for politics. You're a very progressive politician. Do you see Virginia and Northern changing fast enough for your politics?
Didn't you say that when Corey Stewart was on the show last week?
I do. I think it's important.
Well,
he's consistent. He also repeats himself.
But also, not all of the people listen every week to Coach O, and it's good to know that someone thinks Northern Virginia is New Jersey, because I do too, with all the terrible traffic.
Well, the traffic notwithstanding, Virginia, the demographics in Virginia are working in favor of the Democrats and progressives. I think that we saw that in Loudoun County last cycle, that they had went from an all Republican board of supervisors, or I think 3 or 4 Democrats on their board of supervisors. We see that in Prince William County. I think we'll see it in a big way in a presidential year. I mean, when you look at the presidential returns for Loudoun and Prince William, and even some of the further out suburbs, they're going to look a lot more like Vermont, than they do like places like Alabama or Mississippi. Now, can we get those folks to turn out more consistently when we have our odd year election? So come 2017, when we have to elect another governor, will those localities be as deep blue as they are during a presidential year? That's the challenge for folks like me. Is to make
Virginia specifically moved its governor's race away from the presidential year, so it wouldn't have to compete with this.
That's
historically, conservatives who ran the state did that.
Yeah, that's the way it's been, and it was to keep a conservative electorate, even with Democrats, so that they wouldn't lose their seats to Republicans.
New state laws go into effect today, one of them keeping pharmacies that provide drugs for death penalty confidential, which you opposed. In the event of a botched execution, would the new secrecy provisions prevent authorities from investigating a pharmacy in question? And what does this new law imply about Virginia's attitude towards the rights of inmates?
So this was a big issue at our reconvene session, and this was an area where I differed with the governor. So I can be accused of being a lot of things, but I'm not always a hack for the administration. The governor's proposal was, the problem we're having in Virginia is we're running out of sources for the drugs you need to carry out lethal injection. And the solution that the legislature proposed was that we make the electric chair the default method of execution. The governor's solution was that we expand our access to lethal injection drugs by allowing the Bureau of Prisons to contract with compounding pharmacies, and then
we only have a minute and a half,
and then
left.
keep the source and the ingredients essentially secret from everyone. So in a botched execution, it would be much more difficult for counsel for the inmate or their estate to find out what went wrong, why it went wrong, and how it went wrong, because we've guaranteed these folks that supply the drugs a level of secrecy that I think is inappropriate.
You're not in favor of the death penalty anyway, are you?
I am not a death penalty advocate either. So not all for facilitating the death penalty in any way, really.
And we got a tweet from Congressman Don Beyer, who says we should talk about birthdays today. He talks about all of the other people who have birthdays today: Carl Lewis, Dan Aykroyd, Princess Di, Gideon Wells, and of course our guest Marcus Simon. But you knew all of this already, didn't you? Don Beyer has way too much time on his hands, doesn't he?
Or social media folks do. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Kojo. Thank you, Tom.
Okay,
Marcus Simon, he's a member of the Virginia House of Delegates. He represents the Commonwealth's 53rd District, which includes parts of Fairfax County and the city of Falls Church. He's a Democrat. Tom Sherwood, former D.C. council member Tommy Wells, got his bicycle back. Big deal?
His Brompton fold-up bike, he stolen right off of North Capitol Street at 8th Street. He was at the COG, Council of Governments meeting.
You've got a $1,700 bike and a guy is selling it to you for $75.
Well, this is where somebody, this alert went out among Brompton bike owners and others to know what happened, and some guy was offered to buy this bike, and he didn't do it, and it led to the getting the bike back. And so Tommy Wells is very happy.
I thought he bought the bike and gave it back to Tommy Wells.
No, I don't know all the details.
I don't think
Tommy
Wells,
I exchanged information with Tommy Wells. He's got the bike
Tom
back.
Sherwood, he's our
crediting
resident
the police, not some other buyer.
He's a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. That's it for the show today, but there's always more happening on our website. If you're having a cookout this holiday weekend, you'll find recipes for everything from burgers to fruit salad in our archives at kojoshow.org. And if you're looking for a good book, check out our summer reading blog post. That's available at kojoshow.org/blog. Remember, you can take the show with you via your favorite podcast app. If you're getting ready to hit the road for a long holiday weekend, happy 4th of July. We're off for the holiday on Monday. But if you've got Hamilton fever, tune in at noon, because NPR's Audie Cornish will bring you a 1-hour special, Hamilton, A Story of Us. And be sure to meet us back here on Tuesday the 5th at noon. We'll find out why plans for a new sidewalk installation are dividing a district neighborhood for the second time. Until then, thank you all for listening. Happy 4th. I'm Kojo Anand.